First anchor and attorney there. And Joy, you have a guest with you, and really to kind of help break down the case and where we stand right now.
Right, I have with me criminal defense attorney Josh Shipper, who also is a former prosecutor, and you do a lot of work at that courthouse, Fulton County. We were just discussing this news. You know, CNN is reporting that there were 10 indictments actually, you know, this is according to signed paperwork that have been approved, and that there were no bills, so true bill on everything. So in other words, the grand jury.
It makes a lot of sense
approved.
that the grand jury took what Madam Willis, the DA, presented to them and approved it. These indictments have been in process for so long. I'm certain that they were thoroughly vetted by DA Willis's finest people, because the president and everybody else accused is going to contest the form and perfection of these allegations as written indictments returned as a true bill. So it doesn't surprise me that they were all true billed. What I'm surprised at is, like CNN's reporting, the 10 separate indictments. That provides a great amount of discretion and storytelling ability, because that's 10 individual cases, individual counts under that, and individual defendants under each indictment.
And so that's what I want to ask you about. So when we're talking about 10 different indictments, under each of those 10, there can be numerous counts, right? So when we're talking about one or let's say multiple indictments, could multiple of those indictments be against one defendant? How many defendants are we talking about?
So the way that I'm interpreting what's being relayed, and this is super hot, this is just happening, we're waiting to confirm everything. Each indictment is an individual case number. It will be 23 SC number. That individual case can have an unlimited number of charges and an unlimited number of defendants, as long as they're related to some core central case. So there can be a leg of a case represented by indictment number 1, and then a different leg of the case with different people and the same people in a separate indictment. And what we're seeing right now is reported is 10 separate cases, each of which is going to involve some of the same people, telling a very complicated story that allows Madam Willis to cut apart. We were talking earlier about cleaving individual portions of the case away. Say there is the Coffee County portion. She can effectively pluck those individual cases in an effort to prosecute all 10 of the indictments together. It creates a little bit of a logistical nightmare and is unbelievably complex, but she has taken a very aggressive stance in how she's going to prosecute these 10 individual indictments.
So, you know, so just to kind of break this down a little bit further, one of the things that we know, for instance, from the federal indictment, just kind of pulling out some fragments here and there, that some of the co-conspirators in the federal indictment are accused of illegal activity right here in Georgia. Rudy Giuliani, former attorneys, Rudy Giuliani, John Eastman, Sidney Powell, for instance. But so when you're talking about individual indictments, for instance, would it stem from the alleged incident where Rudy Giuliani did a presentation to the Judiciary Subcommittee of the Georgia State Senate with this heavily edited video out of State Farm Arena, alleging, you know, basically widespread fraud,
defrauding the people watching that hearing, presenting knowingly false information in an attempt and in an organized fashion to trick people and defraud them and to then steal the results of the election. That could be one of these 10 indictments. Kind of, you could call it the elector's indictment. Then there could be perhaps a Coffee County indictment, or maybe a Raffensperger call indictment. And DA Willis has spent 2 years game planning this, boarding out how it can proceed, because once a case starts, it's hard to stop. The defense has a lot of rights once the indictment is attached to an individual, because that's a formal legal proceeding. And fighting these individually, there are so many different potentials. That's why she's reserved her right to aggressively prosecute multiple people through multiple concurrent indictments. She can extinguish an indictment or dispose of an indictment over here and still have those same people wrapped up in an indictment just a couple feet away.
Interesting. So, for instance, indictment number 1 could be the State Farm video that we've been talking about, right? And the, you know, the presentation surrounding that. It could hypothetically, it could implicate Rudy Giuliani, former President Trump. And then indictment number 2 could also implicate them.
And say you had one set of indictments with relatively easier to prove allegations versus one with the more complex and academic. It would definitely be something prosecutors do to go after the easy stuff, get the conviction, and use that leverage of conviction, that leverage of incarceration to push the disposition of the more complex charges. If they've already got you for some period of time, it's easier to get you to dispose of some additional time. It really is a complex calculus, unlike anything we've ever seen before.
Okay, but just hearing now that 10 indictments have already been approved, something that we've been really kind of speculating about, trying to predict a little bit. Are we going to see RICO charges?
I'm reasonably certain from everything I've known, and I've been living this case in a kind of a dedicated way the last little while, there's going to be RICO in there because of the power it grants her. She is an experienced RICO prosecutor, and the power of the tools. This is what it was designed for. Some people are going to be upset that it's being used in a political prosecution, but these laws were made extra strong in Georgia specifically because we're a law and order state.
Well, I mean, it was used obviously in the Atlanta teachers case, and some people were upset about that. But what is the rationale? You're talking about the power that going, with the RICO statute gives DA Willis. What is that power?
It's the power to basically squeeze more people and bring more people into a prosecution. Individual prosecutions are very linear. They're straightforward, so it made it very difficult for the states and the nation to prosecute complex crimes. That's because so many people were either supporting or not supporting, and there were difficulties with getting cooperation. RICO kind of fixes that by giving the prosecutor the ability to go squeeze those people on the bottom early and often. That creates contemporaneous evidence of inculpability or culpability moving up the chain. It is the standard logical process we've used to attack organized crime now for about 45, 50 years. And
because the RICO statute requires certain underlying offenses such as conspiracy, right? And conspiracy, when it came to the federal indictment, we saw 3 of those 4 counts were conspiracy charges. So is that part of the reason why you think RICO is something we're going to see?
Yeah, I expect that the RICO will be related to the fraud allegations, convincing people who are state officials, soliciting them to break the law. There's a number of what we kind of call paperwork allegations because they're really uncommon and they're evinced by documents. We're going to see those put together in a way that tells the story of a fraud. That fraud, overarching story, being everything involved with the election, but there are individual frauds underneath that.
Got it. All right. Well, we're going to come back to you for more analysis. I want to send it back to you all in the studio for now.
All right. Thanks very much. Let's go back out to Tori Cooper, who